Hi, it's Gail with Traders Help Desk this morning. And I'm going to actually go over the market review, but also the differences between NinjaTrader and multi-charts. Over on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see I have a market analyzer, and I have two of them up. One is on a 45-minute, one is on 180 minutes. Now, we do have both audio, visual, and email alerts for the market analyzer. You can see this is close to the ATR, this is close to congestion. You also see over here on the 180, this is close to congestion, this is close to the ATR. If we look over in multi-charts, the difference is in multi-charts, I can scan multiple time frames within one window. So you can see that I have a 45-minute, 180, 720, and a 1440. The difference between multi-charts and NinjaTrader is in NinjaTrader, I put a market analyzer on a time frame with multiple symbols. Okay, so I've got all of my symbols here. They're on a 45-minute. Then I have all of my symbols here on a 180 minute. In multi-charts, I simply put in a group of gold and then I have all the time frames in one screen. Other than that, they're almost identical. Now, I do not have the volume divergence for NinjaTrader. We will be working on that when NinjaTrader 8 comes out. Do not have the pullback divergence for the current version of NinjaTrader. When NinjaTrader 8 comes out, we will be working on that. We also do not have the ADX in a market analyzer window. We don't have the ticks to line in the sand or the line in the sand. That is something, again, for NinjaTrader 8, we will be working on that. Now, on the THD RSI, instead of using it in a column like you see here, I put it into a meter window. You can see over here I'm monitoring the yen, the British pound, the Aussie dollar, the dollar index, the euro, Swiss franc, and the Canadian dollar. In NinjaTrader, I rely on this a lot because this would tell me if something is overbought or oversold. If it is below this line, it is oversold. And if it is above this line, then it is overbought. And it's very visual. If the line gets above it, then you know a market is either overbought or oversold. And we can do that on any of the symbols that we trade. So, it's a little bit different, but other than that, it's the same. Now, most of you don't see me use TradeStation a lot because the tools look identical between multi-charts and TradeStation. Really, not very much difference at all because the screens look almost identical. The only difference with TradeStation is instead of a scanner window, it's called a radar screen window. So I wanted to clarify those points for you before I get started on the market overview. One additional point that I wanted to make when you're using the market analyzer in NinjaTrader, because this is updating intrabar, it does use a lot of computer resources. So you want to minimize the symbols that you are looking at in the market analyzer to the minimum that you want to trade. So for example, I would probably be looking at the Dow, the Nasdaq, gold, and maybe crude in one market analyzer window. It will take up a lot of computer resources. Same thing with the scanner window. It does take a lot of computer resources to look at so many symbols. Now, I just built my trading computer, so I know I have more than enough resources for the scanner window. I still need to be careful on the market analyzers until they upgrade to NinjaTrader 8. So just want to make sure everybody is aware of that. Okay, we're going to start with gold today, and you can see that we did have a magenta peak come in on the 1440 and the 720. Here's the magenta peak here. The red dots identify divergence on the ADX. You also see that you had a magenta peak over here on the 1440. So we should actually go back to 1115 on gold. Now, typically what you will see is that the 90-minute will actually make a magenta peak retrace back to the ATR, which is blue, and then you would be able to enter the gold position. So if I was looking at the 90-minute chart on gold, you can see that we are at 72. So I am expecting a magenta peak and probably retrace to around 1188, possibly only to 1192. If it finds support in those areas, then it will go up and finish the retracement back to the ATR on the 1440. So that's what I'm looking at on gold. If we look at the 45-minute chart, you can see we have three levels of resistance up above us on the gold 45-minute chart. If you're looking at multi-charts, you can see you have congestion dots here, here, and here. That is what you are seeing on the NinjaTrader congestion zone indicator. So I do anticipate a bounce down from this congestion dot. And then I would have to analyze the volume to see whether to go long or not. Now, again, you have to be careful because you do have that ATR right up above you on the 720. So we could see a bounce down off of this ATR before it completes the retracement over here on the 1440. It's the same thing basically that I'm seeing on the 90-minute. So on gold, those are the things that you need to be careful of. I do think we will see some upward movement, but it may be later in the week before we get it. Now on crude, you can see everything is in a downtrend. I don't see any indications of being oversold at the moment. Okay, now these values will increase, and I would be watching the daily crude, which is currently at 43. You also see that we had a magenta peak over on the 720. It has completed that retracement and that ATR held. You can see that. You can also see that it's bounced down off of that ATR. This is the same scenario that I was actually talking about on gold. If that ATR holds, we're going to see another down movement on gold. So these are the things that we really look out for when we're reaching an ATR on a higher time frame. Now, I don't see any magenta on the 45, no magenta on the 180, no more magenta over here on the 720. I do think this is going to continue down as it stands right now. So for me, the only positions on crude would be to the downside. I do want to show you the congestion zones on crude 45-minute. Do you see how price came right up to this green line and then bounced back down because this green line coincided with a congestion dot on the 45-minute chart that formed a double area of resistance, and of course crude came down off of that. That's the significance of having these zones in NinjaTrader, is that you always know if you're hitting an area of resistance above with the congestion dots. So I think that's very significant that you realize that. Okay, let's move on to the Dow Jones. You can see on the Dow Jones we have made a magenta peak. It has not completed that retracement. What has stopped it so far? What has stopped it so far is the 720 hit a ATR, and of course it's bounced down from there. If you go down to the 180, you can see that right now it's at a support area on the 180-minute chart. Now this may actually complete the retracement back to this ATR on the 1440 at 17,868. In order to do that, it will need to flip the ATR that is on the 45-minute. So far, it has not been able to do that. Now, if you look at the congestion zones on the 45-minute Dow, it really outlines perfectly the area that it's trading in right now. You have actually a triple area here. You have an ATR, you have a congestion dot from the 180, and you have a congestion dot from the 720-minute chart. All of those formed an excellent resistance area, and price could not break through that area last week. So we may see Dow go down to 17,477. That's the next area of support. Right now, it has come back to this area. It's done it twice now. We may see it go back and test the 17,687 area. It's going to struggle, I think, to get above 17,761. So those are the areas to really watch out. From about 1700 up to about 17,760, a lot of overhead resistance on the Dow. So, we could see a bigger move to the downside, but again, it's going to have to flip this 180 to do that. Okay, let's go and look at the Nasdaq. On the Nasdaq, you have a congestion zone here on the 1440. Again, the ATR on the 720 is holding it back. But you also see on the 180 here that it's trying to form support right around 45.73 on both the 180 and the 45-minute. Now, I'm not seeing a lot of selling coming into this market right now, so I would expect it to pop up to about 4,600 on these lower time frames. Now, will that break this ATR? As it stands right now, no, it will not, because that ATR is at 4601. So these are the areas that you really need to watch out for on the Nasdaq. And I would be reading the volume at these ATRs on the higher time frames, because that's going to let us know whether these ATRs on the lower time frames are going to support price or if they're going to be able to break this ATR. Let's go over and look at the S&P 500. The S&P 500 is, I think, one of the worst markets to trade, but that's my personal opinion. You do have an ATR above price in the 1440. It's at an ATR right here, at an ATR that is below price here, and then you have an ATR and a congestion dot. I do think we should at least see 2106 on the S&P 500, but then we may continue down. That may give it enough force to break this ATR on the 180. So those are the key levels on the S&P 500. Now on the euro, you do see that you have a congestion area on the 1440. It's went back and tested that ATR, and as you can see, it was unable to break it. Now, I do think on the 180, it should come back down to this ATR, which really is coinciding with a congestion dot over here on the 45-minute. So I would want to see what happens between the 45 and the 180. I do think we may see some downward movement on the euro this week, though. Over on the British pound, again, you see that you're at an ATR here, you're at an ATR here, and it's coming back down to this ATR on both the 180 and the 45-minute chart. I think the 45 and the 180 are really going to be significant as far as whether price finds an area that will support an upward move to break these ATRs or not. Until that happens, I would not be interested in it. Over on the Swiss franc side, same scenario. You have ATRs above price on both the 720 and the 1440. You have congestion dots and the ATR in the 45. It's coming back to the ATR over on the 180. I think the 45 and the 180 will give us a big heads up as to whether price will continue down or move up. Then on the Aussie dollar, you do see that we went up to the ATR on the 720, and so far it has not been able to break that ATR. So I would be looking at the 180 and the 45-minute. It has to find support in order to push up through the 720 and the 1440s. And we're seeing that on a lot of the time frames. And I think the most important thing is to see whether we develop support. If we do not develop support at those areas on the lower time frames, which is the 45 and the 180, we could see some more downward movement this week on the markets.